Hello and welcome to Family Foundation Friday on the Authority of Love. I'm your host, Greg Williams, and I'm joined this week by our brand new special co-host. Our regular co-host that's been absent for a while, Mr. David Walls of the Family Foundation. David, it's great to have you back.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's been conference season.
Yeah, it has.
Getting my conference on.
Yeah. And you said you got a little too much of it, but I understand that because they pile a lot into those things, don't they?
Yeah.
How's everything else going? Good for you? I'm enjoying this kind of cool Kentucky summer weather that we have.
Yeah. I've appreciated the rain that we continue to get. I know my yard appreciates that.
Yes. Farmers appreciate that.
So no, it's been good. It's hard to believe that it's almost August, Greg.
Yes, it is. Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow will be August, and people are hearing this and seeing it. Thank you, by the way, for listening on WJMM 99.1 FM Central Kentucky's Life Radio. Or if you've received a video or a podcast from one of our websites, thank you for that. And those who share it, we really appreciate that. I don't know, David, but it's been picking up. I don't know if you've noticed that, but the last 3 to 6 months, on my stuff, it's been picking up quite a bit. So
I thought you were going to say the last 2 weeks when I wasn't on the program, but
no, I wouldn't do that to you. No, it's been picking up the last several months, and so we thank the Lord for that.
Yeah.
That's been our prayer all along, for Him to bring the fruit that He wants from this, and we just want to be faithful. So thank the Lord for that, and those of you who listen and share, we appreciate that. David, you talked about conferences. I know your latest one was what they call the SoCon conference in D.C., right?
Yeah, we were in Washington, D.C. for the Social Conservative Conference. So this is a gathering. It's part of gathering of all of our state family policy councils, and always great to be with our brothers and sisters in Christ that are fighting the good fight in all the states, and to get encouragement. And then also they have our National Ally Family Policy Alliance hosts something called the Statesman Academy, where they invite Christian legislators from the state to go through and get some just great training.
By invitation.
By invitation. And so we were blessed that they had invited, and 3 Kentucky state legislators went through the Statesman Academy. We've had several that have gone through in past years, but this year, Senator Funky Fromeyer, Representative Candy Massaroni, and Representative Marion Proctor were there. So it was great to have them, and great to see other Christian legislators from across the country that want to honor the Lord, to be godly statesmen, and to steward the position of authority that God has given them, and to get trained up in that. So that's a tremendous blessing. And then, as you mentioned, the biggest kind of public-facing part of that is the Social Conservative Conference, SoCon, and just an opportunity to really get a lot of great updates from state and national policy leaders and allies on the battles that are raging of the day. Time to celebrate some victories.
Yes.
But
raise some concerns.
Yeah. I will tell you, Greg, one of the biggest issues that was probably overall talked about the most, at least some of the sessions that I was in, was just the continued need to protect kids online. So a lot of conversation about the next policy steps, protecting kids from social media, which is something we've worked on and are going to have to continue to work on, but also a lot of conversation about AI.
Yes, I knew you were going there. Yeah.
And
I'm reading and hearing a lot about that.
Oh my goodness, just some really, really good information and conversations about kind of where AI is going, how fast it's moving, and then stepping back and saying, what is the Christian biblical perspective of how we should think about AI? We know that we're to take dominion over this world, and God has provided us different technologies and things that can be used for good and for evil. But we really need to be thinking critically, biblically about AI use, and part of this too continues to come back to the idea of protecting kids and what's being introduced to kids in schools. Are we teaching kids to actually learn and understand the underlying dynamics of how to learn and to master skills before we bring AI into the equation and kind of dumb everything down and just say, well, we're just going to rely on this technology to teach us how to do things that we really need to teach ourselves and be taught how to do in the real world. Just some really interesting conversations that hopefully will help shape us as we move forward on some of these issues.
Well, one of the things that, and I knew you were going to go there when you started talking about the technology and everything in social media, because it has become maybe the most overwhelming thing right now in the front of mind. And I read an article recently, I think it was on Public Discourse, talked about how a lot of times what we're got to be careful to do is that if you have AI informing the administrators and AI informing the professors and teachers and AI informing the students, then you have a closed loop. And if you don't test that, then you never know at the foundation. It comes out sounding excellent and great, but it's false and deceptive. And the other part of it, as you alluded to, is what's the foundations?
Yeah.
What is the foundations of it? As Christians, we always have to test that and make sure that we are renewing our mind and taking thoughts captive as God has told us to do. He gave us that for a reason, not just to avoid sin, but to avoid the things that can lead to it.
Right.
And I think AI has great possibilities, both good and evil.
Yeah.
And we've got as many to, just like fire did, just like the wheel did, right? Yeah. Just like the printing press, right? These are technologies from past. Now we've got one that's rapid, and it's all, I said this years ago, David, technology and now AI may very well be the end times Tower of Babel.
Well, and the other thing, Greg, is you think of how quickly social media got just saturated in everything.
The world.
And now we're having to deal with the effects of this full-on adoption, full-on turning kids over to these platforms without a whole lot of thought and really understanding of who's designing these things, how they're addicting people, who's feeding them, and all those things. Yeah. And we're having to work on, in some cases, legislation to try to put safeguards in place. Yeah, exactly. AI is happening even at a faster pace, but hopefully we can, as believers, say, you know what? Let's learn some things from the technology revolution that we've been going through and say maybe there's some things we need to put in place now, certainly to be talking about.
And that's what a lot of the Christian AI people are saying.
Yeah.
And even non-Christian. Elon Musk warned this like 10 years ago. We've got to put safeguards in place or this is going to be overwhelmingly bad. Yeah. This was not a Christian guy. This was a guy saying, watch out, what could this do to humanity? So we do need to be careful and prayerful about that. And speaking of children, which we're talking about protecting, I know we've talked about this before, but you've been hearing more, and we're getting ready to ramp up some stuff on the state law that brings federal tax dollars in as an incentive for school choice, basically, right?
Yeah, and it's the federal tax credit scholarship. So it's really not even federal dollars. It's private donations that are going to be made available to scholarship students that you get a federal tax credit for.
Okay.
So, but this was a part of the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill and the legislation that House Bill 1 that Kentucky adopted. So there was actually a panel talking about this at SoConCon, and just a continued reminder that we need to educate folks across the country about how powerful this is going to be. Yeah. But this is, again, just to remind folks, a $1,700 dollar for dollar tax credit that's going into effect next year that you will be able to donate to a scholarship granting organization and then actually be able to designate that. We're going to be working to encourage folks to designate those to Christian education, to specific schools here in Kentucky. And now that we're opted in, this can, Kentucky students will be able to benefit from these scholarships. And we want to educate and help equip and come alongside our Christian schools across Kentucky and families and everyone about how powerful this is going to be. But kind of the news that broke this week back in Kentucky while I was up in Washington, D.C. was that Kentucky's law to opt Kentucky in to this powerful new program went into effect on July 15th, and then the Secretary of State is the one, Michael Adams, given the authority to officially send the letter to whoever had to be sent in Washington, D.C., saying the Commonwealth of Kentucky is opted in. That happened. I saw they had a kind of a press conference announcing that last week, and so
you had another interesting
that was
point
encouraging.
You had another point with regard to that, was that Kentucky and maybe Kansas, I think you said, were two states that have conservative legislators, liberal governors, so to speak, let's just call it that. And yet we opted in with the legislature, and that's very important. Tell our listeners and viewers why.
Yeah, so states, I believe there's been 31 states that have opted in. Most states have chosen the easiest route, the most obvious route, which was just to have your governor directly opt the state in. The only potential downside of that is that the governor, you'll have to be re-opted in every year. So there could be scenarios where you might have a governor switch parties or switch
change their mind or whatever it is, right?
So again, not trying to scare everyone that opted in all across the country, but I think we're going to be really glad that we legislatively opt us in and kind of grounded it now in state law, and then move that authority certainly away from Governor Beshear, who, again, to remind folks, was adamantly opposed of Kentucky students being able to be blessed by these private tax dollars.
Right.
And again, this is not just for private schools.
I was going to say,
it's for any student. Public school students will be eligible to get scholarships to help pay for educational expenses.
They'll have a clearinghouse, so to speak, that will oversee that as well, right?
A SGO, a scholarship granting organizations, can be set up to serve public school students, private school students, really.
Maybe even homeschool, right?
Yes, it should be. Some of the federal regulation and guidelines are still being set in place. Again, this does not go into effect until January 1, but Kentucky is now officially one of the, I believe, 31 states that have opted in. And look, take a step out from the kind of pure policy side of it. We want to see opportunities for more and more families have the ability to choose a Christian education for their kids and their families.
Well, just choose education. We certainly advocate for Christian, but just to be able to choose that and have the opportunity that they don't have right now.
Yes.
They're a slave to the public education system if you don't have these things.
Right. Yeah. And so, the door has been closed in a variety of ways on some of the state level initiatives. Yeah. And so this federal law now is a huge opportunity, and I really feel like an obligation, and we have a duty and responsibility to make sure Kentucky takes full advantage of that.
Yeah.
So more to come on that, but some encouraging news that kind of coincides with what we were talking about in D.C. and what was happening back here in Kentucky.
Help our parents, our families, our students. Absolutely, we want to do that. And I know we'll have to do this quickly, but recently we've talked a lot about, and the Supreme Court case came down last month, the men and women's sports was outlawed, basically. All right. And so one of the things. Yeah, the
state laws that prohibited it were upheld.
Right, were upheld. Right, exactly. So that you would not have men and women's sports. And we've had Riley Gaines, a good, wonderful NCAA, but we've had recently a professional athlete that came out and spoke and said, we need more of that. Talk a little bit about that, David, as we close out here.
Folks may have heard, because she's kind of gone viral multiple times now, but Sophie Cunningham in the WNBA for the Indiana Fever was asked her views on this, and she gave just a great response. She was like, look, I'm called to love people, but you can't separate love and truth, essentially. I've got to bring truth into this equation. And, she wants to see girls protected in the locker rooms. It's not appropriate for men to be in women's sports. And so she spoke very clearly to this. Yeah. And then it caused a firestorm.
Sure.
And of course, the media, and then some media tried to get her, catch her, and ask her, essentially, is that really what you mean? And she just very emphatically and clearly doubled down and said, yeah, I stand by what I believe, and I think it's common sense. And I agree.
There you go. Amen, Sophie, amen.
So kudos to her. But we need, this issue, we're thankful that we had the big victory. We need more folks to use the platform that they have to speak truth on this issue.
Or many of them are going to lose out.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. These female athletes or great athletes don't do that. They're going to lose out. Save the date, October the 24th, here in Lexington, Kentucky at Embassy Suites, the 4th annual Kentucky Family Forum. Again, John Stonestreet from Colson Center is going to be the keynote speaker, and many others. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. I'm your host, Greg Williams, joined by our co-host, David Walls, and you're listening to the Family Foundation on the Authority of Love.